Welcome back to the Poetry of the Caribbean. We have with us today Miss Shani Taylor, a teacher in practice from the University of the West Indies, and she will share with us today one of the challenges she sees for a student doing poetry and suggests a teaching approach to minimize or prevent it. Welcome, Miss Taylor. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. So, as you mentioned, I will speak about one of the recurring challenges students face in the CSEC examinations and how us teachers can minimize or reduce it. So, one of the recurring challenges found from the CSEC examinations poetry section, as explained by Spencer, is students' inability to interpret figurative meaning within specific poems. Spencer, in her chapter 2, illustrated a set of rural, non-traditional, grade 11 students how the use of literary paper manipulative, in quotes, a term she coined, was effective in changing students' attitudes towards poetry, which in turn helped to solve the challenges they face. Therefore, the use of this pedagogical approach, which incorporates literary writing tasks in a more hands-on way, could certainly help in minimizing this challenge, as she very much proved with the grade 11 students at Hilary Francis High.
Alright, thank you. So I would like for you to explain to us how you would incorporate this teaching approach for two of the poems on the CAQ syllabus.
Alright, so the two poems that I will focus on are The Woman Who Has Employed Her Son by Lorna Goodison and A Stone's Throw by Elma Mitchell. As explained by Enrico Boyne while speaking on CSEC Circle, a YouTube program just like this, where he analyzed the poem. He says, the woman speaks to the man who has employed her son, possesses a universal issue, where a single mother is raising her child on her own after the womanizing father deserted them and the rest of his children. Poverty and lack of opportunity also presents itself, as the mother cannot afford to send his son to school, so he turns to crime.
Yes, and we can very much see that in our Jamaican society.
So the boy wants to provide for himself and his mother, but due to lack of schooling, he is unable to get a regular employment, and this the gang leader preys upon by giving the boy a job and a sense of fulfillment and responsibility. The boy is given a whole submachine gun and appears to feel a sense of pride in this. He craves the validation as he has no father figure in his life.
Yes, indeed. But there's another perspective to that poem. Could you tell us more about that?
I will, most definitely will. So another perspective, a more positive perspective, as Mr. Barrow explained, he said that the capital M in the word man could refer to the government. So this term is used by Americans who came up with this in the 1970s. It could therefore mean that the boy's employment could be an employment for the armed forces in the US. Having seen his mother sacrifice and having yearned to protect her and grow into somebody that protects women based on the fact that he was deserted by his father. Further to that, there is now a state of war in the country. He is now sent off to war. He is given the gun in the same manner. He is also given this license to die because being at war exposes him to death. So the woman gets ready to mourn her son.
Wow, I like that view. Very positive, and in many cases in the Caribbean, we see that happening, where the son or daughter becomes that which they were deprived of. So could you tell us about the second poem?
Sure, I'll be happy to. So the second poem is A Stone's Throw. Alright, so the title of the poem is a pun of itself. So there are two meanings. So in the Caribbean, we say a stone's throw is a close distance. You're like a stone's throw away. And the other meaning is within the poem where they stone and judge the woman. So this poem is an allusion to a story in the Bible in St. John 8 verses 3 to 11, where a woman was caught in adultery and had to be stoned in accordance to the law. When she was brought to Jesus, he famously said, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." The poem also speaks about the issues of violence against women. Currently, there are places in the world that condone the death of women through stoning. This highlights a cliche that the more things change, the more they remain the same. The poem is sensitive to harsh realities concerning women, gender politics, sexuality, and sexual politics, among other important contemporary compelling issues. A woman was captured and is implied by the persona to not be decent. The persona states that the woman has experienced men's hands on her body before, which makes the assumption that if the crowd bruises her, it cannot be compared to what she had experienced before. But the crowd's hands were different, hostile, and she was publicly being humiliated as an adulteress, for men were greedy over her body, the people ready to justify her actions with her death by stone, by punishing a woman for such a grievous act, but no reference made to the male counterpart with whom she sinned with. The poem also speaks about a last assault and battery to come. He defines the crowd last assault to this woman by calling it justice. And this is the justice that feels right. But not only right, but pleasurable. Even comparing being stoned to pleasant kisses. This poem also says that the last assault and battery will be a frigid rain. So there was a possible plan to treat her corpse the same way they thought she lived her life, as an object for men to use her the same way in the crowd. The crowd's justice is abruptly placed on hold by the interruption of a preacher who stopped to talk to the lady. He squats on the ground and writes something that the crowd cannot see, like Jesus did in the Bible story. Essentially, the preacher judges them, thereby allowing the lady to also judge the crowd, leading to the crowd inevitably judging themselves, and re-evaluates the decisions to throw stones. The crowd walks away from the lady, still holding stones and their judgments towards her that can be thrown another day.
And why did you select these two poems?
So the poems share a lot in common. So the poem presents similar themes such as violence, politics, and religion. And we can see that in both poems. In both poems as well, both women have experienced pain or is experiencing pain in their different ways. Similar figurative devices can also be found in the poems, such as biblical allusion, sarcasm, and irony. The first interpretation of the woman speaks to the man who has employed her son can be easily identified and analyzed based on the knowledge students may have about single parenting and other issues, such as crime and poverty that may arise out of it. This is far too similar in our Jamaican society.
And tell us, how would you incorporate the literary paper manipulatives approach to these two poems?
Alright, to tell you the truth, I stumbled upon this book called Transforming Learning International Perspectives. I was reading chapter 2 and I found it to be so insightful, and And when I went back up to see who the author was, to my surprise, it was Dr. Spencer. Now, she was my lecturer. She taught this course, and I was very pleasantly surprised. She provides an insightful view on how this pedagogical approach, that is the literary paper manipulatives approach, can be used in the poetry classroom and to move away from the traditional note-taking style of teaching. Note-taking is important, but students must be given the opportunity to discover for themselves.
Alright, that's it for today on Poetry of the Caribbean. We will have Lorna Goodison next week joining us via Zoom to speak more about her poems and how best students can access them. I hope our program today provides some insight on the poems themselves and how the literary paper manipulatives approach can be used to help students enjoy and access the poems. Thank you for joining us, Shanique. Bye.